The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
We got Kickstarter. Let's follow a range on Detroit. I'm coming around that on the target right now. I've got a couple of these right in front of me. I'm going out there. Right, I got him.
Welcome back to the Lead Pursuit Podcast. This may, in fact, be the quickest time from recording to release for any of our podcasts. And why is that? Well, we're going to talk about Blood Red Skies Digital tonight. I'm joined by my two other partners in crime who've been playing this digital game for a while, Steve and Brett. Steve, how you doing tonight?
Yeah, we're doing good. Hey, how about you?
Not too bad. Trying not to freeze like all of you people up there at Ice Station Zebra. Brett, how you doing down there in the lovely, warm sun of Florida?
Oh, it's freezing today. It was like 61, I think.
10 degrees below zero for Florida. Steve doesn't need to hear that. You just ruined his whole night. Thanks, jerk. See if we invite you back to this podcast. It was, 50 degrees here in Alabama, so it wasn't too bad. But anyway, we don't want to belabor everyone with the weather in America because some of our listeners are probably in Europe and at northern climates, and they're miserable like Steve. So, hey, let's talk about what we've seen or what we're working on, first of all, because I'm not working on anything except like staring at my miniatures longingly every time I go to my storage unit. Brett, what about you? You apparently have been actually looking at some Stalingrad HE-111s and some 109s.
Yeah, I've mentioned it earlier, but Kevin made up a sheet for me for the last 3 cargo aircraft to make it in and out of Potomac, and they happen to be HE-111s. They were using bombers and anything else they can get their hands on to deliver airland supplies into the pocket in Stalingrad. And anyway, got the sheet. I've started painting some HE-111s, and I've got a whole squadron or a handful of BF-109Gs as well, and I've painted them up as specific aces that were in Stalingrad. And Kevin has also made a sheet just for that too, so I'm going to get cracking on that.
In case people don't hate you enough, let's just clarify. You already have 3 HE-111s painted up, and I can't remember if they are Mediterranean or Battle of Britain, but you already had those painted up because we played with those. And now you have 3 more that you're painting just as HE-111s that were used as transports?
Yeah, I'd like to have all of them.
Every single HE-111 ever that ever flew? Yes. You're a jerk. Well, no, that's good that you're getting to do that. I mean, I'm actually glad that you're painting and doing some work while you're there in your new digs, waiting on the new house. I think like the majority of the Lead Pursuit team is moving. Steve, don't move. We need your new facility to stay where it is.
Oh no, I'm not moving again. The next time I move will either be into the like old folks home or the box in the ground. So this is where I'm dying, man.
No more moving for you. Yeah, because between Trevor moving, me and Steve moving, I think everybody's all undergoing the moving misery. So we'll
and it's nice that I live far enough away from you guys. Nobody's asked to borrow my truck yet, so that's
exactly.
That's always a plus.
Yeah, I think my family's getting tired of that. Hey man, can I borrow your big passport? Can I borrow your truck? Can I borrow your trailer? Yeah. Or my favorite, hey, I'll be back in town on Thursday. Want to meet me at the storage unit? Yeah, nobody figures that I'm inviting them over there to drink beer. They're like, yeah, he must have more crap he needs to move. So my family's on to me for that one. Well, we've seen a couple other things in the discussions in the Ready Room, and I know that nobody's listening to this episode to hear us talk about what's going on in the Ready Room or to talk about what Brett is painting. But I don't want people to feel like we're not paying attention to what's going on. We've seen some interesting ideas for acrylic templates. We've seen a little discussion of, how to make some either wingman effect templates or firing arc templates, outmaneuver templates, all kinds of cool things like that. We will talk about that more in detail in a future episode because I get the feeling that there's all this pressure from the internet to talk about Blood Red Skies Digital. What is this Blood Red Skies Digital thing anyway? So let me set the stage for what we've been doing. Steve, Brett, and I, and some other miscreants in the UK who we won't talk about, but I'm sure you know, have been working with Warlord Games, with Andy Chambers, and with a company called Diecast Digital to test a very early prototype, as the term goes, a pre-alpha prototype of a digital version of Blood Red Skies. Is it complete? No. Is it going to Kickstarter? Yes. When? Oh, sometime at the end of February. What does it look like? Well, we can tell you a little bit about it. We're not going to spill all the beans here because, frankly, that would be no fun, and probably Warlord would hate us for stealing their thunder. But we're going to talk a little bit about our experiences and how we got here and the things that we ran across as we were doing Blood Red Skies Digital. I'm going to pontificate for a minute and say, how did we get there? It wasn't 100% due to Tabletop Sim. But what I will say is that the community's absolute love of Tabletop Sim probably pushed Andy further in the right direction because he's been looking at digital publishers for a while, talking with friends that he knows and people he trusts in the industry. But in March of 2020, when we started doing the Blood Red Skies Tabletop Simulator piece, Andy let me know. He said, hey, I've been talking to some digital designers. There will be something in the future. Let's make sure that we figure out what people want. So as we all kind of rolled into this creation of Blood Red Skies Digital into the summer of 2020 and things were kind of thrown in our lap, it was interesting. Steve, you'd been a huge help to me on the Blood Red Skies Tabletop Sim. What was it like going from a world where things were unskinned and there were no movement templates that worked from a sandbox of Tabletop Sim into Blood Red Skies Digital?
The biggest thing is it was an adjustment, really, is the best thing I could say to it. Is the big thing, I guess, that I would stress between the two is that you use the word sandbox when you're talking about Tabletop Sim, where you need to know the rules. You basically need to have played it on the tabletop miniature version to play it in Tabletop Sim, where what Diecast Digital is going for is much more of a gaming experience, where they're kind of giving you the whole thing packaged in a gaming sense, more than just giving you the tools to play the game.
Yeah, and I've talked to people because it's been funny. There's always people who will come back and go, "Oh man, but I love Tabletop Sim. It was so straightforward, so easy." And I go, "You weren't the guy trying to figure out how to keep models from falling over and calling Steve in the middle of the night and going, 'Hey man, can we change the model because it doesn't play well with other models?'" So I think while Tabletop Sim was an interesting step, and there still is some utility there, obviously, if people want to play pickup games or do whatever, or import their own models or import their own cards, there's great utility there. But you got to know what you're doing. It's not like playing a game where you're being held inside the rules. You have to know the rules yourself.
When you say the word easy, right? Easy is a relative term. So if if you're proficient in playing the game on the tabletop miniatures version, and you know what you're doing, and you have a group of people that you play with all the time, then yes, it's very easy to play Tabletop Sim, right?
It's super intuitive because it's the same thing you're already having to do. Know the rules, know how to move your miniatures. You just learn a new interface. Well, Brett, you had played a lot of campaign games in Tabletop Sim with Steve, and you guys had done a lot of different expansion kind of work to Tabletop Sim, some that could be released, some that couldn't, depending on what Warlord allowed us to do. But what was your first feeling opening up the Blood Red Skies Digital and seeing painted Wildcats, painted Zeros over Midway Island?
For me, I think I said this to Ash early on, it seemed to me like all the things you want in your Blood Red Skies games. It was sort of like you do the great artwork and the cool pew-pew noises and the card prompts and all these other things that kind of help you play the game. If you're comparing... I wanted to respond in more detail to somebody on Ready Room who suggested, "Oh, this looks to me like it's going to be just like Tabletop Simulator." I wanted to kind of dig into that and respond, but I wasn't sure, what was appropriate to say right now since we're just dealing with this, pre-release beta or whatever. But it's so much better than that. It's movable like that, where you can play the game and you can move your own pieces, but there's so much more to the interface and so much more to just the visual part of it. I think folks are going to be pretty excited. It's a big step up.
And I think that was part of the thing that I loved the most was the enhanced visuals, because I felt bad that when we released Tabletop Sim Blood Red Skies, it had simply painted, one color 3D models. But let me tell you guys, I suck as a photographer. I suck even worse as someone skinning 3D models. So you didn't want me to try to paint those models. And it comes down to hours in the day. Some tabletop sim mod hobbyists have a lot of time. I'm juggling a lot of different balls, keeping a lot of plates spinning. I just didn't have time to skin those things or to find somebody who could. So, I think as soon as when I opened up the game and I'm like, wow, these things actually look like airplanes. They don't look like little models on a stick. I think that was part of the fun that at least I've experienced. And I laugh. I'm a sucker for the little pew pew noises. I had a discussion in the Aerial War Games Facebook group about that. Not many people pitched in, but I was trying to ask people what really matters when you go to a game like that, and why do you play, especially solo, on the computer against an AI, a game that you could break out and you could play it against yourself if you wanted to. I was playing the wonderful 1970s sci-fi game Ogre, and sure, I could play a game about big cybernetic tanks against myself and push the counters around. But it was actually fun to have the little animations when things get shot and pew pew noises and things exploding. that makes it a little bit more fun. And it's also, I found it nice to play against an AI, whether it's a very difficult AI or a very basic AI, just because at some point you're like, I don't want to think about what the next move is. I want to do something. I want to react. I want to play the game. So that was a lot of the fun part for me.
That's a really good point. That's something I think folks are going to get out of this, even at the most basic level, right? The single player version that you could just pick up and play. And I think I would tend to do that a lot, just to almost like practice games, like just go through a lot of iterations to try different things and just kind of explore the game in that way. That's something you really can't do on Tabletop Simulator, because you're not
right.
You're still playing against yourself.
Well, and that was the fun thing with playing Wildcats versus Zeros, was there was some discussion in there that we've had in the Ready Room a number of times about how to single trait aircraft play. And it's just kind of interesting to go out there and see really what the effect of the robust card is, and to see it over multiple iterations, that if you tried to sit there with your buddy and play through that many games, the other guy's probably gonna be like, yeah, I'm tired. I don't want to play that anymore. And it was fun to be able to jump into, even in this prototype, a game where you had a semi-random start. Advantage levels might have been the big difference, and then you obviously had some fairly fixed pilot skills in what we were playing. But it was fun. You got to try out different things, and for me, it was interesting to try out different maneuvering and different tactics to move multiple aircraft into a position where they could tail or shoot down the other aircraft that are out there. So,
along that line, I thought it was pretty cool a couple times where, because you start kind of at the same spot just because it's this, this prototype, right? So you're always starting in the same state. So I would make the same move and the computer would make the same move. And then I would make the same second move and the computer would make the same second move. And then I'd kind of go, oh, I'm going to change my third move and see what the computer's response to the third move is. Almost like, you were playing that learning game with the computers. I felt kind of like Matthew Broderick at the end of War Games where he's playing tic-tac-toe and trying to teach the computer that,
Yeah,
it was
I did
really
that
fun.
a couple of times because that was fun. And people are going to ask, they're going to be like, well, what do you guys mean by pre-alpha prototype? We've seen some screenshots. It looks pretty cool. Well, graphical splash aside, this game is to Blood Red Skies Digital kind of like the X-35 is to the F-35. They may have looked a lot alike, and they may have been manufactured by the same company, and they may have had the end state goals to be the same, but you aren't going to shoot an AIM-120 AMRAAM out of an X-35. They weren't dropping, GPS and laser-guided bombs out of an X-35. Its flight envelope wasn't as big as an F-35. So, yeah, it was a prototype. It was a technology demonstrator. It proved that something could be done. And I think that's really what the prototype we've been working with, and that I was even playing today. I think, Brett, you might have hopped in there to take a look at it. But it's one of those things that proves that, yes, these game rules can be adapted to a computer. We can get an AI to figure out these game rules and play roughly inside the structure of it. And then, we can add on layers of Chrome and other rules on top of that to make a more expansive and a more fun game. Which really kind of brings me into the question a couple people have asked of, why Kickstarter? Why doesn't Warlord just fund this? Why are they doing a Kickstarter? This doesn't make sense to me. holy crap, I didn't realize how expensive game design digitally was until I got into this project. I don't know about either of you guys, but I'm kind of used to video games growing on trees, and that's not how it is it?
No, Ash has been talking some big numbers in terms of what it costs to get this thing off the ground. So it makes sense to me that Kickstarter would be the way to go. And I understand that that's not terribly uncommon in this sliver of the industry, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting with a small team like Diecast Digital and a very resourceful, reactive management that is willing to go out there and fix things and change priorities and be able to react quickly to input. It's not cheap, and it's kind of a model that works well if you can get over those hurdles to get into what it takes to fund those people to be on the team. And there's a lot of games that we've all seen out there for Kickstarters for physical games. For digital games, it's been an interesting, I guess I'd say an interesting series of pitfalls over the last couple of years. There's been some that have done great via Kickstarter. And then there's some that people have pitched in a Kickstarter, and the digital game either gets rushed out by the game publisher or just doesn't deliver what people thought it was going to get. But the nice thing from talking to Ash and his team over at Diecast Digital is they understand the game. The funny part is Ash is a gamer like the rest of us. You know, we're all sitting there, and you know, he's showing us his models, you know, from 40K and from, you know, Aeronautical Imperialis, and you know, we're talking about Advanced Squad Leader and things like that we all grew up playing and have played. But he's definitely one of us in that sense, which makes me feel good about the development of it, especially via Kickstarter, where you get to the point where you say, hey, community, what do you want? Fund what you want, and we'll make it happen, and we'll see it through.
Yeah, which I think is the real plus with Kickstarter, right? Is it really gives the community like a real chance to kind of illustrate what's important to them and then pledge accordingly. And then it allows the developer to kind of put their resources in the spot that the community has told them is important. So I think it's a really good chance for that to kind of work both ways for everybody.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it a little bit here in a second, but there is a lot of flexibility in Kickstarter as you go along. Now, we'll see how they actually run the Kickstarter. Are we privy to everything? Absolutely not. I mean, hey, there's things that Andy and Warlord Games and Diecast Digital are going to do that they're not going to tell us. They've been kind enough to allow us to play the prototype. They've been kind enough to ask our input on things, but like all things gaming, Lead Pursuit's input may not be worth 50 cents in a cup of coffee. So we'll see where all that goes. I know we had talked about pledge levels initially, and that's always the first thing you discuss with the Kickstarters. Wow, what levels are people going to get at? What are those rewards going to be? What do gamers want? And I think that loops us almost back to the first question of why Kickstarter, because we know the Blood Red Skies community is not huge. We know there's a lot of players out there, but it's not like 40K. It's not like Flames of War. So when you talk about a digital game, you start talking about pledge levels and things that people who don't necessarily play Blood Red Skies in its physical form are going to care about. So I know there was a lot of time spent going back and forth over emails with that. But I think from what I've seen recently, there's a lot more pledge levels than we even saw on the proposal. So hopefully there will be ways to offer rewards to digital-only gamers and offer rewards to gamers that are pitching into the digital but really play Blood Red Skies, the physical game, and kind of attract a wider audience. Because once again, that's the goal. I mean, if we got every Blood Red Skies player in the world to pitch in, we probably still wouldn't get the amount of money that is needed to get to some of the cool things that will require a lot of hours of coding.
Yeah, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say here in this forum, but some of the potential where this thing can go based on pledge levels. I mean, some really exciting potential expansions or directions that the game could go, I think, based on interest, you know. That's exciting to me.
Well, and that's the thing people have to realize is that coding costs money. It isn't free to have somebody sit behind a machine, and this prototype that we've played is by no means done. They've done a lot of AI work recently, but there's a lot of hours of programming the AI, and every time you add a new airplane or a new trait or a new theater or doctrine card, you got to tweak the AI to really understand it. So there's always work there. And then just the rote monotony of bringing in cool maps, making them look good at all resolutions in the game, bringing in aircraft models, skinning them. that also takes money. Unfortunately, I wish you could just drop models in at high resolution and have them auto painted, but the AI isn't that good. So it's going to cost money to get to some of those cool features, and especially things that require a lot of back end coding, whether it be really cool multiplayer features, campaign features, branching storylines, any one of those things. Oh my gosh, those take hours of coding, and that unfortunately takes money. So that's why you have a lot of different pledge levels to attract a lot of people from different backgrounds and different gaming goals. And then also it's that, speaking of goals, it takes you right into the stretch goals. If stretch goals aren't things the community wants, then that becomes, a self-licking ice cream cone. That's great that you say you need, another $10,000 to get one more, one new scenario in there, but it's not going to help if nobody wants that scenario. So that's kind of why we've said it a couple times. I know Brett and Steve are probably tired of me saying it, but every time somebody asks about what's going to be in the game, I remind people this is your time for input. Give Warlord Games your feedback. Tell them what you want a digital Blood Red Skies to be, because that's really going to be reflected in the stretch goals. And if you want it to be every faction of any possible World War II faction represented in Blood Red Skies Digital, then tell them that. Understand that will probably mean you only get a couple aircraft per faction. If you say, hey, really concentrate on the Pacific, and that's what you want Warlord to do, then you'll get a lot of different aircraft types, but you will end up with a Pacific-only game. And so it's going to be a little bit of compromise there. You could say, hey, Pacific's great, but I really want a Battle of Britain starter set again. And Andy's going to laugh at you and go, thanks, I already made the decision to tie this to the Midway starter set. So I know there's been a little bit of discussion there about why release a digital Midway starter set and a physical Midway starter set at about the same time. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
Pacific is a theater that I feel like everybody really likes. I'm not sure why, but I just feel like Pacific, man, everybody is just really excited for it.
It's
so
all Black Sheep Squadron. Blame back Black Sheep Squadron. It's all their fault.
No, I guess it's just something about it that the aerial war in the Pacific, people just are drawn to it, and not taking anything away from the Battle of Britain or, it's just, I don't have an answer for it. There's something about it.
Brett, what are your thoughts on tying the two starter sets a little bit together? One physical with resin and all these cool things we've seen and heard about, and the other one being a digital, in a sense, starter set, but something much larger than just a limited few model release.
I think it's exciting that this could time nicely with the release of the new starter set, the physical starter set. To have a digital complement to that is cool. The thing that intrigues me even beyond that is, kind of mentioned like potential. I wonder if, someday this could have the kind of success that could lead it to be the platform that maybe somebody like Steve and I would use to do our campaign games versus using TTS.
Oh, absolutely. And, the interesting part is there's been so much discussion about campaign games recently between the digital team, us on the lead pursuit team, inside the ready room as people start doing those games. I think everybody understands people want to play a meaningful storyline campaign. The difficulty is people use so many different engines and ways of doing it, whether you're using like the Battle of Britain games or Luftwaffe the game, various games out there that model it all, or you have a campaign system like you and Steve are working on, or even the fairly straightforward one that Andy started with and then expounded upon with a variety of aircraft and things. So it's kind of funny. I think everybody realizes there's a use for there's a desire for the campaign. The question is how much money and how much time are people willing to throw at it? So campaigns may be fairly linear. They may be somewhat branching. But I'm going to digress there for a minute because it's kind of funny to me to see how other games have done campaigns and how they sell them. So some of them do really linear mirrored campaigns using the same maps and changing the models around in the video game world. And they call it like 170 different missions. I'm like, no, really? This game is about 30 missions done over a bunch of different factions. So it's that's something that I don't think we're going to have that problem in Blood Red Skies Digital.
I would even need, really campaign stuff built into the game. I would just need the ability to, play different maps, if you will, and different aircraft, and the ability to build squadrons in each of those theaters. And just like how Steve and I do Tabletop Simulator, we have the book for our campaign and we do our own bookkeeping, but we need a place to move airplanes around. Man, to be able to do that potentially with this platform, if you will, with the cool skins and the great graphics and the cool sound effects and the card prompting, and a lot would have to change. You'd have to have some additional stuff than a skirmish game, but man, if that kind of potential really excites me, that it could be that way with enough backing and support.
Oh, yeah.
That's what people want.
With enough backing, and I think that also comes down to it, is that people have to realize if you want these more complex game modes in the game, not you using your campaign plan outside of the game, but if you want it in the game, then that's something that really does cost a lot of money. So it's kind of interesting to me. I'm hopeful that we'll get to that point. I'm also a realist, and I realize the Blood Red Skies and aerial wargaming and people interested in another World War II video game that is turn-based, that's not real-time strategy, may be smaller than what we want, but hopefully with the Kickstarter and with the stretch goals and the pledge levels that are out there, we'll get this number of backers for Diecast Digital and Warlord that really take them to a very usable level. And I don't mean to minimize the work that's been done as something that's not usable. Oh, it's usable. The real question is, how flexible will it be? Because obviously it's really easy to code fixed numbers of aircraft, fixed or interchangeable pilot skill levels. But it's really hard to give somebody a full and open sandbox that also complies with all of the game rules, which is where I know there's been a lot of discussion on the game dev side. So let's talk about a couple other things. The 700-pound gorilla in the room. What's the price point? I don't know. We don't know. We can guess. I think the joke of it all is, Steve, what would you pay for the full Blood Red Skies?
Oh man, that's a tough question, right? Because if some of the stuff we've seen with all the cool features, man, I would have no problem paying like full on, $70 Xbox.
I know, I'm the same way. I laugh.
I look at some of the stuff they talk about, I'm like, man, just take my money.
Well, I've paid more for games I've played fewer hours than this prototype. And maybe that says something sad about me and Blood Red Skies.
Agreed.
Oh, that's exactly right. I'm glad you guys said that, because I was wondering if I was crazy. The last time we got to go to Adepticon, I dropped $100, and happily so, on a Kickstarter for this interesting miniature, I don't know, it was like sailing ships game. And I was excited to get it. Months later, it arrived. Maybe a year later, I got it. I don't even think I've taken a cellophane off that box. Now, fast forward, nice. And I'm not, I don't have regrets either. I was happy to get that thing. I was really excited. I just, you were
too busy painting HE-111s, weren't you?
Exactly. Well, so now fast forward, here I am playing Blood Red Skies, right? And I have friends who play Blood Red Skies, and we talk about Blood Red Skies all the time. And somebody's offering me all this stuff. I'm thinking, man, $100 doesn't seem like a big deal at all for this, something that, it's not going to stay in a wrapper. Let's put it that way.
So I laugh about that because, and I was going out playing some other aerial war games on Steam, and guys were laughing. They're like, oh man, I don't know. You going to go buy a copy of it? I'm like, yes, I'm going to go buy a copy of it because it's on Steam. Things on Steam are not crazy expensive. Well, unless you're buying something from the Civilization line of games with all of its DLC. But, the funny thing is the more I thought about it, I'm like, man, stupid me has paid way more money for games that I've played less. But that also is me. That's not the rest of the Blood Red Skies community. That's not the people you want to pitch into the Kickstarter. If I were to hazard a guess, and I'll couch this in, this is totally a guess, I'm gonna probably take a stab that the intro level of the Kickstarter is going to be somewhere between $20, maybe $25. Probably not even that high. Probably just be around 20. And oh, by the way, there's going to be a lot of that I do know they're going to allow beta access on. So they want a fairly constrained alpha, which is understandable. You don't need 10,000 people giving you their opinions in the alpha of something. but they're really going to open up the beta from everything that the Diecast Digital team and Ash has said. And so I think there's great potential there for people to get something cool for a cheap price, and then it might actually be something with a lot of value when we get through all the Kickstarter stretch goals and everything, and it has a lot more expansions to it.
I'm gonna piggyback on what Brett said. If I would have pledged $100 for the potential to get what it could be, and they would have delivered me the pre-alpha prototype that I'm playing right now, I'd probably still be like, it was $100, but I wouldn't be all that upset about it. I mean, it's cool looking, right? I mean, it just looks cool, and like Brett said, the poo-poo noises. I mean, the potential where this could go, I think, is something that really there's a lot to be optimistic and hopeful about.
The good news, ladies and gentlemen, is if the only people to pledge are the 3 lead pursuit guys that are on right now, you'll get the pre-alpha prototype. So I agree. I had to laugh because maybe my Kickstarter expectations and my prototype expectations, all these things are so low that I sit there and I go, man, for what I think they're going to put at this game on Kickstarter, I think it's going to work out well. And I say that, I love the guys over at DVG, but I think I just spent, oh gosh, I don't even remember how much I spent on all the expansions that already need an errata to them. And there's cards that are printed wrong, and there's point values that are wrong and things. And so I'm like, shit, man, I just spent probably $80 on game expansions, which I now have to somehow figure out how to, cut and paste and fix them. I don't have the problem with digital games. They get patched. So so I think that we're going to be well ahead there. So something that I do need to address, though, is I mentioned DLC for other games. I will let the Warlord and Diecast teams really roll out their plan, but I don't expect there to be true extra DLC. I think from what it sounds like, the plan is that the goal is to get as many backers as possible to drive this game to a level of cool things we can release and that we can fund people to build for the game. And then from there, it's a separate project. Does a big publisher step in and pick it up? Is it the kind of game where you say, okay, we released it last year. If everybody wants Theater X, if everybody wants the Mediterranean, that's a Kickstarter that's got a certain threshold that's you have to get to fund it. Or if you say, hey, we want Stalingrad and we want Stalingrad with all the airplanes, that's great. That's a Kickstarter with this much money that we need. And I think there's good and bad to that. It's good in that it focuses what the Kickstarter is about, but it's bad because now you have to kind of wait a year and then go back to everybody and go, okay, hey, you bought it on the original game. We have a big expansion coming. Let's put our hands back in our pockets and see what pocket changes there. And so you're not going to get near as much backing, but it is still a capability to do that. So we'll see.
Baby bird me through what the Kickstarter for this might look like. So I'm guessing like maybe in the next month they're going to make an announcement that says here's our Kickstarter, and there'll be levels, and if you pledge a certain amount, you get that item, that whatever right. They say.
So that's the long and the short of it is, somewhere around, and I'll say the 20th of February, even if I'm getting out over my skis, there will be a Kickstarter that will drop, and it will run for about a month, and you'll have a chance to jump in and to pledge in. And if, there will be a variety of pledge levels that at the end of the day get the same digital game. But the fact is, as more and more people pledge and the dollar value of those combined pledges goes up, then those stretch goals open up. So let's say, and I'm going to make up numbers here. So this is not real. This is not what Ash and his team have put out there. But let's say the first stretch goal is at $5,000 and it's a picture of Steve as a Wildcat ace. As soon as $5,000 are pledged, that gets unlocked, and that's delivered to everybody who gets the game. And then let's say the next level is $10,000, and that's that's an an F4F Wildcat painted up in Doug's favorite colors. And the reason I'm saying this is because the goals are going to be things that the community asks for. So if the only people asking is lead pursuit, enjoy flying your lead pursuit themed airplanes with, hero pictures of all of us. But the point is, as you hit each of those stretch goals, for people who are not familiar with Kickstarter, each one of those will unlock more content. So maybe the content is a map. Maybe the content is some airplanes. Maybe the content is an ace. Maybe the content is just more theater and doctrine cards tied to a specific theater of war or specific series of campaigns. And some of it will also be tied to game modes. Things that require more coding, more testing, more behind-the-scenes work. Those game modes may be tied to a stretch level. So if you say, I want to play 6 players over Malta, totally configurable scenario with every faction, that might be like the last pledge level of the game. Probably not going to be in there at all. But if it was, it would be like the last pledge level of the game because that would take a lot of coding. So as you step through each of those, the community funds more things open up. Now, I guess this brings me back to the Kickstarter piece. So I'll tell you a little bit from my own experience and from being the lead pursuit guy pitching into Kickstarters. Like Zero Leader is a great example. I didn't pitch in early because I knew it was going to be popular. I knew people were going to go out there and I wanted to see where people were going to drive the game up to. And it went through some pretty straightforward early on stretch goals. Then, as happens sometimes with Kickstarter, people exhausted all the stretch goals. They're like, oh crap, we got to think of some more stuff real quick. So some more stretch goals went out there to keep driving the community's funding going up. And then when they kind of hit some milestones is when I, as the guy who was the kind of the lead pursuit funding, chose to pitch in. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be the guy that pushes it over this goal. Not that matters. Not that with 50 cents gets you a cup of coffee. Not that someone's going to write that on my tombstone. This guy got us over the $60,000 limit. But because it was cool to me, because I could click on that and say, yep, I got you guys over that limit. Good luck. Keep plugging with it. So I think there's going to be some people that'll wait a while. There's some people that will pitch in immediately when they see what different pledge levels are open and the cool things you can get. I mean, yes, you probably can get an autographed photo of Brett in his Ranger panties, but we'll see how that all shakes out. So, anything else you guys want to kind of throw out there about the prototype that you've seen without going too much in the details? Because I'll be 100% honest. We really want Warlord and Diecast to roll out the story of the game and how it plays and how it works. They've got a good social media plan for that, so we're going to play into that. But anything else you want to share there, Steve?
No, I think we covered it pretty good. I just can't stress enough, man. It's going to be fun. I really hope it gets to some of these goals. I think it's going to be a really, really neat product.
Brett, besides seeing the DO335 in Blood Red Skies Digital, what do you want?
Yeah, that's what I want. Well, we talked a little bit about some of my, I guess, wishes for it to, it'd be awesome if it could go to the point where, we could play our campaign games. Steve and I could play our campaign games just by throwing whatever planes and whatever theater we want and do our thing. It could have that potential, that's exciting. And even at the most modest level of, like a skirmish game between 2 opponents with 6 planes each, it's pretty fun. And I think even beyond just single player, to be able to do multiplayer like that, it would just be a good time. It's shiny, it's cool. I think the mechanics, the way that things work, how you move aircraft around and all those important things to you, you'll be satisfied once you try it a few times. I think they put a lot of effort in, and like you said, Ash understands the game. So it's, if you've ever played one of those games where it's like, who the heck made this? The people don't play the game. They don't understand. That's not the case here. It's pretty clear the way the mechanics work, the way it's served up. A lot of thought has gone into making it true to what we play on an actual tabletop.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably what I enjoy most about it, is that it feels like Blood Red Skies. It doesn't feel like something where I have to think about it being Blood Red Skies. So that that to me speaks volumes for the developers, for Ash and his team at Diecast Digital, and the fact that they actually care about the gaming experience first, and all the cool chrome and all the pew pew noises and lighting effects across the water and all the stuff that really is fun and makes a game. I don't want to necessarily say immersive because it's still a board game, but it makes it feel like something different than just staring at the Malta map or at a sea map from Diecast or from Deep Cut Studios. It's nice to have all those cool video game-ish things underneath it. So we're going to take a break real quick. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the future of tabletop sim and what does that mean for Blood Red Skies. And we're back. So let's talk a little bit about the other Blood Red Skies digital game, Tabletop Sim. Now, I bring this up because over the next few podcast episodes, don't worry, not every episode is going to be about digital, but over the next few podcast episodes, we're going to talk about some other digital aerial war games. And why is that? Well, it's to compare what other people have done and to say, here's how other people cracked the nut, and to let Warlord Games and Diecast Digital defend their product and say, this is how we're different. So Tabletop Sim, Steve, do you remember how much you paid for that?
$19.99 on sale or something
Exactly.
like that, probably.
Brett, you were probably about the same, right?
Yeah, for some reason, 20 or 25 bucks sticks in my head.
Yeah, so I laugh. I paid $20 for something where I had to bring my own rules. Now, unfortunately for Blood Red Skies, not only did I have to bring my own rules, but I had to work with everybody else between Steve and Roz and Roger and Brett and a lot of the people that helped to actually build Blood Red Skies into there. And it still required me to know the rules, and I spent $20 on it. But sure, you're right. That unlocked a lot of other games, a lot of other work that other mods had done.
It's like you had to be a programmer. I mean, it gave you
I wouldn't
access.
go that far. I did not program anything.
Well, I mean, kind of. I mean, you had to assemble all the stuff. It wasn't like all the pieces and parts existed there for you. So you had to grab those from somewhere. And then I know Steve spent I don't know how many hours manipulating the way the models work.
Yep.
So they actually moved around.
Steve is my hero for fixing all that.
Yeah, it's awesome, but it was a lot of work. It wasn't like turnkey is my point.
Right. And to be honest, it was one of those things that we're all doing as a hobby, and I certainly appreciate all the hours that Steve put in when I'd call him and go, hey, person X asked for aircraft Y, can we get that custom built in there? And Steve never said no. So if you're listening to this and you're the guy that we built the Pacific set for, you're welcome. So it's one of those things that Steve never said no to any bit of the work. I was stupid, and I would sit there until the cows come home, fiddling with tokens and maps, and the community was super helpful between Tiny Wargaming, Deep Cut Studio, Unipolar, all of them sharing map artwork that we could use. But at the end of the day, it still was kind of bring your own brain. You had to understand the rules. So where do we go now? And I bring this up because this is a very delicate discussion that has to be had about tabletop sim and about, I'm going to use two words that people hate to hear together these days, internet freedoms. But something the community has to understand is not only does Lead Pursuit have to put their effort where it's most useful to the community, Warlord has to put their IP and their artwork and their models and their tokens and all those things where it makes the most sense. Is that into Blood Red Skies Tabletop Sim? Probably not. Tabletop Sim is fun. I've enjoyed it. It's been super useful, especially working through a campaign system. But do I expect Blood Red Skies Digital to impact Tabletop Sim? Absolutely I do. And I don't think there will be, quote, Warlord approved expansions for Tabletop Sim. And that shouldn't bother any of you, because you should all have the cards that you can scan and put into Tabletop Sim for you and your buddies. And The models are all out there. It took a Marine with like no internet skills about 5 minutes to find them all in Tabletop Sim. Those things are out there. Are we ever gonna have a polished version of TTS that looks like BRS Digital Edition? No, we're not. And the point is, Warlord would never support that, and they shouldn't. So, am I telling you that Blood Red Skies Tabletop Sim is dead? No. I intend to make sure that things still work, and that as we can put things out there, and Warlord will allow us to, we do. But understand, if you've got one system that's a sandbox versus another that's actually the game built in, Warlord's going to back the game, and they're going to put their IP into the game that truly is Blood Red Skies, not a sandbox where you have to bring your Blood Red Skies brain to. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the one thing that's really important is when the whole tabletop sim thing started, it was kind of like, hey, this is a substitute to us being able to game during this craziness that's going on in the world, right? And
Absolutely.
I feel like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
still going to work very well as that, where the game is much more of a game. Log into a server, find a friend to play, go on and play the computer. Tabletop Sim still is going to work very well if, hey, I want to test out a tournament list that I'm going to be taking against my friend. Hey, we want to run an online gathering of eagles and do a tournament where everybody can make their own list and bring it. Or, we're working on a new rule set. Let's hop into Tabletop Sim and check this rule set.
Well, the example I would use is Check Your Six. Now, I know there were technical issues and there were glitches with that game, but none of the Check Your Six organizations that I know say, hey, we're going to jump on the server and we're going to play this Check Your Six game with the old code for Check Your Six. They say, hey, we're going to jump on Roll20 and we're going to play a Check Your Six game on Roll20 because it gives them the freedom to configure everything and to add in new airplanes and new targets and things that weren't hard-coded into the Check Your Six video game. So you're right, there's always going to be a need for that. And I think that, I guess, part of my frustration dealing with Tabletop Sim has been I never intended to be the dude who developed Tabletop Sim Blood Red Skies and managed it and did everything else. I really kind of wanted to be the person who was the spark for it and said, hey, man, I did the legwork. I talked to Warlord. I got us the Blood Red Skies, starter set, the Battle of Britain starter set. All the rest of you import your stuff, offer your own mods, and do that to expand the game like it's been done for a lot of other games, whether it be 40K, whether it be Bolt Action. There's a lot of those other games out there that have a lot of user-created content, and it doesn't come from one spot. You go out, you find the models you want, you find the data you want, and you bring that to the game. So that's kind of my pitch about tabletop.
Yeah, I think having them coexist, there's a spot for both of them, and it's just a different place and a different use for both systems.
Yeah, and it's been said, if the digital edition version of Blood Red Skies visually and gameplay wise does not smoke Tabletop Sim Blood Red Skies, then pretty much Ash and his team at Diecast Digital have failed horribly. So it's one of those things. You have to understand the niche that each of those software pieces fills, and understand why they're there, and understand the level of support that publishers are going to give them. So I kind of bring that up because, having talked about Tabletop Sim Bolt Action players may ask me, well, why should I back Digital Blood Red Skies? Well, because you're proving to Warlord Games that you care about their line of games. And you're proving that, hey, you know what? Rather than having to go out and buy the starter set, I'm going to back this Kickstarter. We're going to see where Digital Warlord Games goes. Because I'll be honest, there could someday be in the wings a digital Bolt Action. Is that probably going to happen anytime soon? Probably not. But if Blood Red Skies takes off digitally, then there will be people around Warlord Games asking, well, why isn't Bolt Action in there? Why isn't Victory at Sea in there? Why haven't we done digital games, of these other miniatures-based games?
I've already seen posts on Ready Room saying, hey, where's this for Cruel Seas? So there's interest.
Yeah. Cruel Seas would be a very straightforward one. And Cruel Seas is a lot like Blood Red Skies in the sense that you have a small demographic in the big Warlord Games demographic. You're right. We're not pike and shot. We're not, bolt action. But the fact is that group of people says, well, if you can make me a game and I can, and the community as a whole, the Warlord Games community can get us over this hurdle. Heck, even as a Blood Red Skies player, if the shoe was on the other foot, I'd love to spend $20 and play digital bolt action. Would I play it a lot? I don't know. I used to play SSI close combat games years ago and all those. So I probably could be suckered into that.
I was actually just gonna say that same thing. Bolt action really interests me. I don't have the time to throw another hobby on the workbench and paint a bolt action army.
Exactly.
And sit down and read a rule book. But if I could get a bolt action game that I could click on an army, throw it in, the rules are all built into the game, and I could just go start clicking on stuff and playing bolt action, I would be on it in a second. And I guarantee you that would springboard me into like a month down the road. I'd drop $2,000 or $3,000 and I'd have like the entire,
that is exactly what I was going to say. So it would both be wonderful because I'd be like, I'm going to play bolt action online. I'm going to play Gates of Antares online. This is great. I always wanted to see what these factions were like. And then I know where that leads. And it's a very dark place that I spend money.
That's a really good point because it seems to me the Warlord's vision for Cruel Seas, Blood Red Skies, and Bolt Action is that they could work together on the tabletop. You could interact with all three games in some way. Well, that might be like Steve said, I don't want to. There's a barrier to entry to me, right? I'm pretty happy where I'm at with my little airplanes, right? And I like the World War II stuff, but that seems like a whole new thing to learn and a whole bunch of models to paint and all that stuff. I'm resistant to that. But if I could kind of explore it digitally, who knows what would happen? Who knows where that would
no, we
where
do
that rabbit
know what
hole
would
would go.
happen. That's the problem.
But
exactly. We know that would involve us
what would
buying
happen.
armies that we'd never paint.
Well, I have to believe that there's bolt action people that feel the same way. They've got their thing going. They're satisfied with this immense bolt action army.
There absolutely are.
Yeah.
Because if you ask the guys over at Snafu Podcast, you ask the guys at Anything But One podcast, you ask those guys, and they're like, yeah, I dabble in Blood Red Skies. It's fun, whatever. I always borrow someone else's airplanes. Or, hey, this guy in our bolt action group, he also has Blood Red Skies, so we always use his airplanes. And I think if people suddenly said, oh, wow, I could play the game and I could play it, on a computer and not have to invest in any models, then I think that's a cool thing for the other associated Warlord gamers to get in on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of games like that if I could play it in a digital version, I'd probably have to buy a second house to store all
It's the
my
story of
models.
me and 40K. Why do I keep getting back into 40K? Oh, because cool video games keep coming out. And I'm like, oh, that would be so cool. And yes, damn it, I go buy models because of it. So yes, I'm an idiot. We know that. But the other interesting part about having a game or a video game for one of the games in the Cruel Seas, Victory at Sea, Bolt Action, Blood Red Skies continuum is if you did want to play combined games and your digital game allowed those scenarios to be played, then it's really easy to be playing a Bolt Action game and to play the frontline scenario from Blood Red Skies where you're actually playing those aircraft fighting through, getting into the bolt action game. Okay, now we're going to keep playing with our regular bolt action game because we clicked through on the video game pretty quick. And all of a sudden, you don't need a whole other table. You don't need more miniatures. You don't need all this excess stuff just to figure out how many of your Spitfires fought their way through into the target area.
Man, now it's kind of now my brain's really going, it's like, man, imagine if it was just this big, massively multiplayer bolt action Warlord, World of Warcraft, World of Warlord online universe. You just hop on and play games. Oh man.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? That'd be awesome. I would never paint anything ever again. No. And let me be 100% honest. I mean, nothing says we won't see that one of these years. The question is, when will a really big publishing house pick it up? When will will it be the Blood Red Skies license? Will it be the Bolt Action license? What has a community big enough to trip people over to do that? And I think it's awesome that Blood Red Skies might be the first step in that direction. Of course, that being said, there is also a propensity for this to be just a one-off game. So not that any of us are promising a World of Warcraft of World War II Blood Red Skies. But the fact is, if you drag in the other gamers that you play games with, whether they're Check Your Six gamers, whether they're Bolt Action gamers, the more you get those people involved and the more you get them interested in pitching into the Kickstarter, the more features we're going to have in the overall game. So it's just something you have to understand.
Yeah, it's the word that comes to me is companion. You know, if you're a Bolt Action player, this is a great companion. That and I think the price point they're talking about is not a big barrier to entry. I think a lot of people might be willing to try that out that aren't even like really super into Blood Red Skies. We need to recruit those guys at our game places to come check this out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've been talking for a while, almost an hour. Guys, it's been great to at least give some of our knowledge of the Blood Red Skies Digital Edition prototype, pre-alpha, not to be called a beta or anything else. Steve, anything else you want to leave the listeners with?
Good news from our friends at Mythic Americas. We're going to have our tournament rescheduled that was canceled again because of COVID. So keep an eye out for that here in the late winter, early spring months.
Awesome. That's good to hear. I know a couple people that are up in that area have actually logged a couple games. I know Pat put a few things up on the Ready Room there, showing some games that they played, and I think that will be good to get that tournament going. I know it's a fitful start dealing with COVID and everything else. Games and events are on again, off again. Siege of Augusta went this last weekend. It was fairly small. I think there was some Blood Red Skies playing going on there. I didn't hear any battle reports. But I know that, the January tournament games in Florida may or may not happen. So it'll be good to get the guys at Mythico Studios and Mythic Americas, that whole team up there, to open up their facilities and get a game going. Brett, anything from the land of sunshine that you want to leave us with?
No, I just got to, wrap my head around all these, I don't know, developer terms like alpha, pre-release, beta, alpha, whatever. I just know, I think what resonated with me, you said it's a technology demonstrator is what we've messed with. That's a good analogy for me. And I've been pretty pleased with what I've messed with so far.
Yeah, I don't want to be fanboy about it. I'm the first person to remind people that Lead Pursuit needs to be an independent media outlet, and we don't work for anybody. But I got to say, I was really happy overall as early in the process as we were. Would I have been happy if it was a release game? Absolutely not. Would I have been happy if it was, a beta test that I had some input on? Absolutely. And was I really happy at a pre-release alpha? Oh my gosh, yes. So we will see where it goes. What I'd encourage people to do is, like I said earlier, give Warlord your feedback. Go out there and follow the Blood Red Skies Digital Edition on Facebook. They're on Twitter. They're on Instagram. Follow them wherever you do social media. Give them feedback. Be brutally honest in your feedback. It's funny. Ash and I were talking, and he said, I haven't had too many negative comments. And I laughed, and I then relayed some negative comments I'd gotten. And we talked through it. And every one of those comments, even if they are negative, even if it's someone saying, I don't know why you would do a video game, I would never waste my time with that, that allows us to chalk somebody up in the category of, okay, there's a person who doesn't want to do it. That helps us understand the distribution of Blood Red Skies players, Bolt Action players, video game players, etc. So give us the feedback. Let that team for Diecast Digital and Warlord know what you want to see in the game. Because once again, you leave it up to the Lead Pursuit podcast, and you're going to have a lot of screenshots of Lead Pursuit guys giving you the thumbs up from a cockpit of a Corsair, which may not be what you want. That way you get expansions and you get features that you want into the game. Please go out there, like us, subscribe us, leave us feedback in social media or on the website, and most importantly, go out there and play some games.
Yeah, I'm curious what pledge level is the shirtless picture of Brett.
Yeah, Brett in his Ranger panties. I don't know. I think to get that's probably an early stretch goal, because that's like throwaway. I mean, you can go out on the internet and find that stuff.
That's only available at the highest levels when they fully expand the campaign mode. And, I'll be the local bombshell, right?
Exactly. The local bombshell card will get played, and there's Brett in his Ranger panties. That's a disturbing image. I don't ever need to think about that again.